Recognize the senator from Montana.
Mr. President, I want to thank my colleague, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi, who also chairs the pro-life caucus in the U.S. Senate. I want to thank her for organizing this event today because we just passed the 3-year anniversary of the overturn of Roe versus Wade. That was on June 24th, 2022. That decision was a pivotal moment in our nation's history. Roe v. Wade was the worst Supreme Court decision, I would argue, since Plessy versus Ferguson, and resulted in the tragic deaths of millions of innocent lives. Countless numbers of precious unborn lives have been saved. In fact, since Roe's overturn, just in these 3 years, 13 states have implemented laws to protect life starting at conception. 19 states total have enacted pro-life laws. And earlier today, the Supreme Court delivered yet another pro-life victory in the Medina versus Planned Parenthood decision. The court affirmed that states have the right to decide how Medicaid dollars are spent, and that no one can force a state to fund the abortion industry. For too long, abortion providers like Planned Parenthood have used federal health care dollars as a backdoor to sustain their operations. And this ruling puts an end to that abuse and upholds the fact that taxpayers should never be compelled to subsidize big abortion. Cindy and I are the parents of 4. We're now the grandparents of 7. And I've always believed that protecting the unborn is one of our most important duties. It's a belief that I carry with me each day to this job in the U.S. Senate. In fact, that's why back in 2018, I founded the Pro-Life Caucus for the U.S. Senate. I had no idea at that point, this was pre-Dobbs, how important our work would become. And I'm grateful to the state of Mississippi, to Senator Hyde-Smith's home state, where the Dobbs decision came from. It was the courage of those folks in Mississippi that resulted in that case getting before the Supreme Court that had a profound impact across our nations with this Supreme Court ruling just a little over 3 years ago. During my time as chairman of the Pro-Life Caucus, we confirmed pro-life justices of the Supreme Court, including Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who went on to serve as that critical 5th vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. I remember that day very well when that news came down. I was struck by a truth that's found in the Old Testament. It's in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5. This is a great mystery, a mystery of God, where it says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were even born, I set you apart." What a great truth, how God knows us, He loves us, and a reminder that all life, all lives are made in the image of God. And that's why there's dignity and there's value in every single life. And that includes the unborn, includes the disabled, the aging. All lives are worthy. I'm glad to see our country has made great strides in defending the defenseless. When we had our 4 children, I remember going through those appointments, those doctor appointments with Cindy and seeing those amazing images, seeing ultrasounds, but that was 20, 25, even 30 plus years ago. Today we get to relive that again with our grandchildren, and now our children when they're having their babies. The technology is so remarkable. It's amazing to get an insight in what's going on in the womb. And, for those who don't believe in creation, don't believe that we were created, sometimes you just got to go back and see the miracle of life that's occurring as that little baby's being formed in the mom's womb. But today, the chemical abortion pill is the most widespread form of abortion. In fact, in 2023, it accounted for 63% of all abortions, and that number continues to rise. President Joe Biden and his administration removed safety precautions on taking mifepristone. including the in-person dispensing requirement and follow-up visit with a medical provider. And thanks to the Biden administration, the pills can even be shipped out by mail despite concrete evidence showing they're extremely harmful to women. In fact, the FDA and the pro-abortion advocates market the pill as, quote, safe as Tylenol. But here are the facts. There was just a recently published analysis of health insurance claims of over 865,000 women across the United States. They found that 1 in 10 women experience serious adverse effects, many of these resulting in emergency room visits. Now, let me share a stat here that's going to be shocking. And the data here is irrefutable, and we invite anybody to come check this data out. Here was the conclusion. The adverse health effects for women in this most recent study was 22 times higher than what's on the FDA's label on the abortion pills. Clearly, in no way is that abortion pill safe. And the FDA should reevaluate appropriate protections surrounding its use. I'm confident that with President Trump's leadership, with our Republican majority in the U.S. Senate, we're going to make some progress here. Already, President Trump has supported the pro-life movement. One of his first actions after taking office was to pardon 23 peaceful pro-life protesters who were unjustly incarcerated by Joe Biden's Justice Department. And in the U.S. Senate, I was proud to join my colleagues this Congress to introduce the Unborn Child Support Act, which will allow pregnant women to receive child support payments. Caring for a child starts long before birth. Any pregnant mom, any mom who understands what that process is like knows that caring for a child starts long before birth. And by supporting expectant mothers, we recognize the humanity of the unborn child and make sure that women have access to the resources they need to choose life. I'll fight to get this bill across the finish line. You know, it takes courage to stand for life in this day and age. I'd like to take a moment to thank all who have played a role in advancing the movement, from many of my fellow senators here to advocacy groups, to the grassroots advocates back in our home states, and to those who offer us prayers at night. Everybody plays a part. And I'm confident that one day, by the grace of God and the actions of this body, abortion will be unthinkable, where every preborn child will be protected by law. You know, I spend a lot of time with students who come from our states. We all know that. We see the kids when they come, they tour us. We'll have junior high kids, sometimes grade school, high school students, come from small towns, medium towns, large towns from our states. So we have these Montanans that come into our office. And I always like holding a meeting. I bring them into my office, and we sit down. Sometimes not enough chairs. Some students will be standing up. And I love just taking questions from the students. And invariably, there'll be a student that will raise their hand and ask me a question about my stance as it relates to a woman's right to choose or abortion. And rather than be a dad in that moment, and I've been a dad in a lot of moments raising our 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, I think sometimes it's best for us to collectively kind of give some thought to how do you answer that question. So what I ask them is, how many of you have a smartphone? And most every one of those students has a phone. So let's just do a thought experiment here. Go to Google and type in 15-week baby, 15-week baby. And then touch on the images link on top. And let's talk about what we see there. And of course, the students, there's not a lot more said at that point. It's silent. I've done this many, many, many times because I just ask a basic question. Let's just have a debate. Is that life or not? If we were NASA scientists and the Mars rover lands on Mars and that image was projected back to a group of PhD scientists and literally rocket scientists, would they conclude that's life or not? And I've done this many, many, many times, and I will tell you, it's just silence as we all reflect on that basic question. Now, why did I pick a 15-week baby in the womb? It's because that was the line of demarcation that Mississippi had in their Dobbs case. That defined, they said, Mississippi said that's where life begins. That's where the protections begin. And it was that basis, that case went before the United States Supreme Court. It was what a 15-week baby looks like, and I think all of us should reflect on that. No matter where we are politically, where we are in terms of advocacy, just to take a look at those images and reflect and ask yourself, is that a baby or not? And I think the images and the technology today with the clarity of ultrasounds is a pretty convincing argument. So this week, as we celebrate this historic anniversary of the Dobbs decision, let's reflect with grateful hearts on the progress we've made. Let's look forward with hope to a future where every life, whether born or unborn, is valued.